This program is supported by MyLabs, patient-ordered testing. San Juan Regional Medical Center is expanding its services to offer low-cost blood screenings year-round. Now offering walk-in convenience to get the blood tests you want when you want them. MyLabs, patient-ordered testing, is available at the hospital's laboratory and the Outpatient Diagnostic Center on 30th Street in Farmington. With nearly 20 tests available, there's an option for everyone. MyLabs, patient-ordered testing, a wellness service of San Juan Regional Medical Center. 11 minutes past 8 o'clock. It's Thursday morning, October 18th. Good morning, everyone. You're listening to KSJE 90.9 FM and 90.9 HD. Special good morning to our viewers who are tuning in and watching live this morning on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. Welcome aboard, everybody. Coming up in just a moment, we'll be talking with my guest from San Juan County about the upcoming 2020 census in the country, of course, and how San Juan County is getting ready to make sure every resident gets counted in the 2020 census. There are some things the county is doing already to make sure that that happens. We'll find out exactly what that is and why it's so very important for the county. Coming up in just a moment with my guest, Mike Stark from San Juan County. Later on in the hour, of course, we'll check on the economy as we do every Thursday. Darren Church from Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation will be talking with me about what's been going on in the markets and what's been going on with the economy. That is happening later on this hour at 8:55 today. At 9 a.m., don't forget Roving with the Arts with Mick Hess. That's not a picture of Mick Hess on the screen, but that is actually the composer Haydn. We'll be hearing some Haydn symphonies at 9 on KSJE. And skip ahead to noon, it's our local movie review program, A Review Too Far. And this week, our reviewers are talking about a couple of films. One is the film about Fred Rogers, Won't You Be My Neighbor? And the other film they'll be talking about today at noon is the new release First Man. That you'll hear today at noon on KSJE. So we hope you'll tune in. Lots of reasons, of course, to check it out. You can always check out our programming schedule by going to our website at KSJE.com. It's also where you'll find our regional events calendar at KSJE.com. And for those of you who are watching, we're showing you a screenshot of the events calendar right now of some of the things that are available online. And if you are part of a nonprofit organization, we invite you to add your event to our free events calendar. The 5th annual San Juan County's Got Talent show coming up this Saturday here at San Juan College. That will benefit the San Juan County Partnership. Next week, Nate Powell, the author Nate Powell, is going to be here for a book signing at San Juan College Library on October 23rd. And of course, that is part of the One Book, One Community program this fall here at San Juan College and throughout the community. Nate Powell, of course, one of the co-authors of the book March, and he'll be signing that book and talking about it next week here at San Juan College. Well, let me get to my guest who is here with me this morning. Welcome back to the KSJE microphones. Mike Stark is here, the Chief Operations Officer with San Juan County. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Welcome back.
Hey, good to be here again.
I'm glad you keep coming back when I call you up. So appreciate that.
It's the great cup of coffee you provide me. I can't
maybe that's
turn it down. It's excellent. Thank you.
If that's what gets you here, I'm all for it. So thank you very much. But we're talking about the census this morning, and some folks may be thinking, my goodness, it's only 2018. Why are we worried about this happening in 2020? But there is some planning that has to take place, right? And the county's on top of that.
There's a lot of planning that has to take place, and you know, we've been through this before, and I think we understand here locally the importance of the census and making sure that we count each and every individual living here in San Juan County because it has so many different effects, not only on obviously the population count, but our economy, to outside business investment, to folks looking to make decisions here on do they grow and expand their business. You know, lots of data and information that's provided to a variety of different organizations, not just government entities, nonprofits, religious organizations that utilize that data to determine what are the needs within the community.
Right.
Because it's very, even though the census every 10 years is just the short form, limited number of questions, we can talk about that later as that relates differently to the American Community Survey that's done every year and just a sample of the population. But no, the census is extremely important for us to participate in. Going back in history, obviously the Constitution requires the census. So
right.
Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution requires that a census be taken. The reason for that, going back to 1790, was the fact that we needed to allocate representatives to the U.S. House. And so that's the purpose of determining how many reps per state based upon population.
I see. And of course, and that goes into redistricting and other things too once those numbers come through, because that's the numbers that everyone bases those districts on, correct? Is the official census numbers.
Correct. So that's affecting, obviously, then state redistricting. That's affecting here at the local level, both the county, municipal, college districts that exist, because we have to make sure that we rebalance those and making sure that they're generally equal in population. For example, at the county, we've got 5 commission districts, and so last time around we had to rebalance and make sure that the districts were fairly even in population and then also geographically worked with each other. And so that's ultimately one of the reasons to participate in the census. But then when you look at the impact from a funding standpoint, what the census means, there's $675 billion, that's billion with a B,
okay, yeah, right,
that are distributed annually by the federal government to a variety of different programs and services, about 300 actually, that census numbers are used for allocation of those dollars, Medicaid being the largest program.
Okay.
And so when we have an undercount, which is really what the concern is we have folks that either are not aware of the importance of the census or we're not communicating with them well enough. Obviously there's a big push nationally, but here locally we know what the needs of the community are and where folks may or may not be getting communicated with, and how do we resolve those roadblocks to where we can get everyone reporting. Because George Washington Institute of Public Policy did a study, $2,972 per person is associated annually with the census count. So just an example, in San Juan County, population back in 2010, 130,000 folks here.
Okay.
We had, let's just say we had a 1% undercount, which is 1,300 folks. Doesn't sound like a lot.
Sure.
It's a big deal.
But 1,300.
Multiply 1,300 out by 2,972. I'll just use 3,000. I'll round it up.
Right.
It's
awfully early for math this morning, Mike.
It is awfully early for math.
I'm so glad that you are talking about this and computing it in your head, and I don't have to. But yes.
But that's so $3.9 million annually that we'd be missing in different federal programs that's distributed based on that number. That's $3.9 million annually.
From that 1%.
From that 1%.
Undercount.
Now, here's the other issue. The census number stays with you for 10 years.
Right.
So now we're talking about that undercount affecting you to the effect financially of $39 million
right.
on a 1% undercount. You go above and beyond that, obviously multiply it out if it's a 2 or a 3% undercount. We had in 2000 a verifiable undercount of 2% here in San Juan County. That did happen.
Ouch.
And verified that there wasn't enough of an effort to get out and reach all the various areas in the county with the importance of folks responding to the census, either self-responses, which is how it normally starts, and then at the very end, if you don't respond, then census takers are going out trying to get
those door-to-door surveys that we hear about.
You bet.
Right.
You bet.
And so that is what you're planning for right now, is to get the word out and to start the process of making sure everyone understands through, I guess, programs like this, how important it is to be counted for some of these things that folks do rely on. And that could be, it doesn't have to be medical care or medical programs necessarily. It could just be money for roads and bridges and sewers and infrastructure and things like that. Isn't that also determined maybe by population?
It can be. And so depending upon how the grant's structured, population generally is a criteria in how awards are sent out.
Right.
And the federal government will look at direct beneficiaries on a project. And so obviously the lower we are in population, that causes us an issue when we're looking at large projects that we're seeking federal dollars on. that we don't have a high number of beneficiaries per dollar that we're receiving. Right. So yeah, it can affect us in a variety of different situations that sometimes you're not even aware of. For example, business decision making. There's no doubt we saw an influx of business into the county, into our cities, from 2010 to now, because we went from 2000, a population of approximately 113,000, to 130,000. We were actually one of the fastest growing MSA, metropolitan statistical areas, during that time. Of course, we've seen the other side of that here of recent, because we're one of the smallest MSAs, so when you have big population swings, you're on the top of the list.
It's a big percentage increase,
It's a big percentage increase.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you have, it doesn't appear like a lot numbers-wise, but as a percentage per capita, you go the other way, you obviously end up on the list on the negative side.
And that's the other thing that concerns, I think, a lot of folks, too, is that we know that the population here is probably smaller than it was at the last census. But exactly how much smaller, I don't think we really do know. We have some best guesses and some approximations, but we look at enrollments at the local school districts and things like that, and we see that those head counts are down and things like that. We can look at the for sale signs in some of the neighborhoods in the communities. And but this is a way to get those official numbers. And even though there's a lot of out-migration going from San Juan County for whatever reason, for the folks who are still here, it's so important that they get counted, because we know the numbers are going to be less than they were in 2010.
Yeah, I think so. Right now, today, and these are estimates, so the American Community Survey, as I mentioned earlier, that's sent out annually to a sample of the population nationwide. And from that, then, it's what used to be called the long form. So it had the list of 40 questions or so that seem to be very personal in nature, asking about household income, asking about how many children in the house,
status of employment,
status
maybe,
of
things like that.
Yeah,
Right? All those demographic
very
things.
broad relative to the short form, which is utilized every 10 years for purposes of counting the population, which will be coming up here soon. But estimates from that, as well as here in New Mexico, the UNM Bureau of Business and Economic Research, BBER, they are always looking at estimates of population. So today, according to their estimates, we're at 127,000. So we've actually come up quite a bit from the low point of close to 115,000 just a couple of years ago. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way when you look at traffic and folks in the community. But keep in mind, when people are working elsewhere, that's considered temporary employment. If they're still maintaining a household here, they're still considered residents of the county, of our community. And so that, obviously, I think there's a lot of our folks that are doing that, just trying to maintain a job and some income, given some of the changing dynamics here in our economy. So yeah, going back to business decisions. How important, when you look at capital investment from 2010 to now, we have seen a lot of restaurants, we've seen a lot of retail stores that have come on the scene. And so part of that is when you start to meet thresholds for business decision making, certain population levels, all of a sudden you're on their radar for potential capital investment. And we've seen a lot of that growth because of our higher census number and growth that we experienced from 2000 to 2010. And so that's also going to affect other businesses in our community who look at population growth. If that's important for the business in which they're in, we'll make investment decisions there likewise. Likewise, we have to think about, they can make the other decisions, make the other decisions, which is to not invest. So, we want to make certain that everyone understands how important it is to count each and every person, because there's a lot riding on doing that. And it's just not solely based upon redistricting elected officials of various districts. I think a lot of people think that. So a
lot of decisions are based on these numbers, I think, is what you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
From public governmental decisions to private business decisions.
Absolutely. So it's very broad in its nature and how the data is used. A lot of folks are suspect of government these days and think, well, I don't want to report back my numbers to the federal government. They don't care about me. They don't need my information. And so we want to make certain everybody knows that we really do need your information. It's really important. If you care about the future of San Juan County, we don't want to be in a situation where we're back to a 2% undercount like we were back in 2000, because it has dramatic ripple effects through our community that folks need to be aware of.
Sure, and especially these days, I would say, when I know, and I think the county is always watching every dollar that comes in when you're talking about revenue, but these days, particularly, I think, when you've seen some of those revenue streams get much smaller or dry up completely or what have you, no governmental agency, I think, has been untouched by the change and the challenges of our local economy. Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement, not just from revenues that are derived here, but revenues that are derived from the state via grants, via federal grants at the federal level. We were very successful back in the day of, I know it's a really bad word, but earmarks.
Right.
A lot of great projects that were finished here in San Juan County as a result of those earmarks. Now the federal government has gone to, instead of direct legislator requests for appropriations, majority of the federal programs are competitive based. In competitive based, then we're looking at other factors, which generally one of the big factors is population and number of direct beneficiaries for federal dollars.
Right.
So when we're on the lower end of population, whether we've got an undercount or not, quite frankly, it has a dramatic effect on us being able to fund various projects. Over 20% of the county's annual budget is made up of intergovernmental grants. And so, when we started to see obviously the local economy struggling, but then you look at the state and the federal level, and opportunities there started drying up, it makes it really difficult to fund some of these large capital projects, roads and bridges and things that are very valuable and important for our community, but they're very expensive too.
Right. That's
so
true.
we generally need to find outside assistance to make those projects happen.
That's true. And again, I think some of those earmarks that people maybe don't like talking about, but they did provide some really great opportunities for local cities and the county, and usually it's a lot bigger project than what these governmental entities could afford on their own. And that's what they're all about.
Absolutely.
Is doing these big one-time investments in the community, whether it's a big road project or a public works project or what have you, that these communities could not afford on their own without this type of help.
Correct. And, I can say very proudly that, and, obviously the reason that a lot of those earmarks came to pass was you had projects elsewhere that, for example, I think probably the most famous one was the Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska.
Right.
Where a bridge was built and it didn't connect, and sure, those projects unfortunately shouldn't have been funded when there wasn't well thought out planning in advance, that there weren't other dollars associated with making a connection happen. But here we funded Kirtland's wastewater system that's in place today, that's tied into the city of Farmington. That was funded with a federal appropriation, and look at how that system has expanded over time. Look at how it's allowed, quite frankly, the city or town of Kirtland to incorporate because of that sewer system. Right. So very positive growth that's happened as a result of that federal appropriation.
And the environmental benefits, too, because I remember talking probably with you about some of the issues with lagoons and things like that in the Kirtland area that were just causing a real big threat to the river and other neighbors in that area without those types of infrastructure.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So a lot of benefits all the way around.
Right.
From that.
And it goes right back to the counting of the census, which is our focus here at this part of the program. Mike Stark is my guest, by the way, everybody. He is the Chief Operations Officer with the San Juan County government, of course, and already planning for the 2020 census. And before we take a break, Mike Stark, I want to ask you a bit about working with the Navajo Nation, because that is another challenge of counting people on the reservation where maybe a street address doesn't exist for a lot of families and individuals, and you've got to be in partnership with the tribe, and the tribe has to be in partnership with the federal government, I would expect, to have an accurate count there as well.
Correct.
And a lot of their funding depends on numbers, too.
Absolutely. And so, and we'll talk about this probably in more here in just a little bit, but we, back in 2008, the county took the lead and formed a complete count committee with the help of the Census Bureau. And so it was a locally formed committee adopted via resolution, and we incorporated all of the different local entities that really have a part in making a successful count happen. So that included at the time, of course, the county, at the time 3 cities, San Juan College, the Navajo Nation, the 4 school districts, the Council of Governments. Were all part of making that effort happen. And so that group met monthly, and so we'll fast forward to where we're at today.
Right.
Our county commission at the last commission meeting, or actually it was 2 commission meetings ago, we had one last night, put in place the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. And so to your point about the importance of the Navajo Nation, before we just had one Navajo Nation representative earmarked for the committee, this time we've added 3, and making certain that we have great participation from them and involvement, because you're right, definitely some more remote areas, folks that this year's census effort will be different than, or I said this year's, this decennial census effort will be different than the last time around. That was strictly a mail-in program, so you would receive your questionnaire in the mail the first time around. If you didn't respond, they would send out another one. If you didn't respond to that, then the enumerators would come by to try to count you. This time around, the Census Bureau is using technology, which I think is great. It's going to serve a great purpose, probably reduce costs in terms of using a web-based system initially to self-respond to.
Right.
But we all know that there's a digital divide in a lot of respects in our community as a whole, our county as a whole, but certainly on the Navajo Nation. So that's going to be a struggle to figure out how we, first off, communicate the importance of the census. Secondly, how do we provide the resources, maybe internet kiosks that make it easy for folks to go self-report, because we want to get everyone self-reporting. I mean, we want to reduce the number of enumerators that have to go out and have to track people down. That's where you end up leading to an undercount situation. The more folks we can get self-reporting up front, the better off we're going to be as a county as a whole. And so, like I said, there's a lot of challenges there. And so that's the whole purpose of this committee, to meet, to discuss what those challenges are. The county commission has earmarked $5,000 for this effort. Tuesday, the city council, Farmington Council, earmarked another $5,000. So we've got some local funds already committed. We're hoping our other partner agencies will do the same, because we're going to have to utilize that like we did in 2008 to market, to provide technology, to be able to get information out to the masses. We do have the benefit this time around of social media being a more prevalent platform.
Sure.
I think more accessible to a lot of folks via their phone. And so we hope that a lot of our advertising and communication will come at very little or no cost. But nonetheless, we're going to have a full plate of challenges in trying to make sure that we count every person in San Juan County.
Right. Okay, very good. Let's take a short break. Mike Stark is my guest, everyone, working with San Juan County, of course. We are talking about the 2020 census and some of the efforts underway already to be prepared for the 2020 census. We'll be back with more in just a moment this morning right here on KSJE. The time is 8:34.